actually here to help.
You can find an infinite power source to recharge our ship? Wolves! We'll let you borrow the moonstone.
The first trailer for Zombies 4: Dawn of the Vampires is finally here, and it's giving fans plenty to get excited about. Disney has also confirmed the official release date, which adds to the buzz. This fourth chapter in the music-filled Zombies franchise brings back fan-favorite leads Milo Manheim and Meg Donnelly as the beloved zombie-human couple Zed and Addison. But this time, things are shifting in a fresh direction. After all the work they did to unite humans, zombies, and werewolves in the past movies, they're now being pulled into a new kind of conflict, this time between two very different supernatural groups, vampires and daywalkers. So what's the setup this time? Well, it looks like Zed and Addison are off to a summer camp, but not just any regular camp with bug spray and bonfires. This one's full of monsters, drama, and of course, a whole lot of singing and dancing. According to the trailer, they're stepping into their new roles as camp counselors, which sounds cute at first, but things quickly get complicated when the camp turns out to be the battleground for a heated rivalry between the daywalkers and the vampires. That's definitely not what they had in mind when they packed their bags. Disney has announced that the movie will debut on the Disney Channel on July 10 with a streaming release on Disney Plus the following day, July 11, so fans won't have to wait long to see all the drama unfold. Now, even though this fourth movie introduces a new setting and fresh faces, it still feels very much like part of the same world we've grown to love. Zed and Addison are still at the center of everything, trying to make peace between feuding groups, and there's still that catchy musical flair that's become a trademark for the franchise. But there are also some interesting additions that make this movie feel bigger in scope than any of the ones before it. Let's start with some of the new characters. Nova, played by Freya Skye, is a bold and intense daywalker, while Victor, played by Malachi Barton, represents the proud and more traditional vampires. They're both shaping up to be central to the conflict at the camp, and it sounds like their clash will have a ripple effect across all the campers, including Zed and Addison. Of course, a bunch of familiar faces are coming back too. Eliza, Kylie Russell, and Willa Chandler Kinney are both returning to help their friends through this tricky situation, and they'll be joined by some newcomers like Julian Lerner as Ray, Swayam Bhatia as Vera, Mekanin Knife as Vargas, Lisa Chappell as the Vampire Eldris, and John O. Roberts as Commander Bright. Behind the scenes, Paul Hohen is back in the director's chair. He's been at the helm for every Zombies movie so far. The screenplay comes from David Light, Joseph Rosso, and Josh Kagan, and both Mannheim and Donnelly are stepping up as executive producers this time around, alongside Hohen, Light, Rosso, Jane Fleming, and Mark Ordsky. That's a solid team, and it's clear they're aiming to keep the heart of the franchise alive while exploring new territory. Another big reason fans are pumped for Zombies 4 is the music. Alongside returning hits like Someday and Ain't No Doubt About It, the film will feature 9 brand new original songs, so there's plenty for fans to sing along to and maybe even choreograph a few TikToks while they're at it. One of the coolest things about the new movie is how much it's expanding the world beyond Seabrook High. There's actually a bit of a time jump in the story, skipping right over Zed and Addison's freshman year of college and landing us in the summer before their sophomore year. That's a smart move because it opens up all kinds of story possibilities without having to slow down for backstory. Plus, according to Meg Donnelly, this whole world of zombies is just getting started when it comes to introducing new creatures. She's hinted before that there's a lot more out there beyond zombies and werewolves, and now with vampires and daywalkers in the mix, that promise is definitely coming true. And speaking of daywalkers, there's already a bunch of fan theories floating around online. One of the most interesting ideas is that daywalkers might actually be a subclass of vampires. It kind of makes sense if you look at how the franchise has treated different monsters so far. Remember in Zombies 2 how werewolves weren't just tossed in for scares? They had a deep backstory, their own culture, and mystical moonstones tied to their identity. So it wouldn't be surprising at all if daywalkers have something similar going on. Traditionally, daywalkers in vampire lore are like hybrids. They have a lot of the same traits as vampires, but they can walk in the daylight, which makes them a little less classic horror and a little more versatile. If Disney is going that route, it could explain why there's so much friction between the Daywalkers and the vampires in the movie. Maybe the Daywalkers are seen as lesser or different by the older, more traditional vampires, and that's where the tension is coming from. And even though this all plays out in the usual upbeat musical style of the franchise, the underlying themes feel pretty familiar, just like how the movies tackled misunderstandings and prejudices between zombies, humans, and werewolves. Zombies 4 seems to be exploring the same ideas, but through a new lens. Identity, community, and bridging divides are all still front and center, just now with a few more fangs thrown into the mix. It also doesn't hurt that Nova and Victor seem like really strong dynamic characters. If they've got opposing ideas about what it means to be a vampire or a monster in general, that could push the storyline in some exciting directions. Maybe the Daywalkers have evolved past some of the old vampire rules, like hiding from sunlight or living in secret, and the traditional vampires aren't too thrilled about that. There's also some speculation going around that Zed and Addison might actually end up taking different sides in the supernatural squabble. Based on the trailer and the newly released song, The Place to Be, it kind of looks like Zed ends up hanging with the Daywalkers, while Addison finds herself more aligned with the vampires. That alone sets up the potential for some serious drama between the two. In fact, one theory compares this setup to an episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender called The Great Divide. In that episode, Katara and Sokka each end up siding with a different feuding tribe, and that creates some tension between them. The idea here is that Addison and Zed could go through something similar. At first, they're probably going to be their usual cheerful, supportive selves, but as the tension between the vampires and Daywalkers builds, they might find themselves disagreeing, especially if they've each grown close to one of the groups. That could be a tough arc for them, considering they've always been such a solid couple, but it would also make for a pretty emotional storyline if the feud puts a strain on their relationship. It's easy to imagine a moment in the movie where they realize they've let their alliances come between them, only to come back together with a heartfelt duet and a shared mission to bring peace between the groups. Of course, there's still hope that the movie avoids that kind of drama. Some fans are crossing their fingers that Zed and Addison don't fall into the same old cycle of arguing and patching things up. They've already been through a lot together, and it might be more satisfying to see them working as a team from the very beginning. Addison has always been the one who tries to unite different communities, and Zed has consistently stood by her side. So maybe instead of letting the conflict divide them, they'll actually be the ones leading the charge toward unity once again. Either way, Zombies 4: Dawn of the Vampires looks like it's shaping up to be the biggest, boldest chapter in the series so far. With a bigger cast, deeper themes, a brand new setting, and even more music, it's clear the franchise isn't slowing down anytime soon. Whether you're a longtime fan or just tuning in, this summer camp showdown promises to deliver all the fun, heart, and supernatural flair that's made Zombies such a hit. And with new groups like the Daywalkers stirring the pot, there's no telling where the franchise might head next. But one thing's for sure, Zed and Addison's story still has a lot of life and undead energy left in it. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.